Hey guys, Lisard here. Today I'm going to tell you another Godzilla story slash concept. And I know some of you might say, Lisard, actually, what happened to the Godzilla and Kong Last Hope Mexican bullet comic that you made like a year ago? Yes, I'm still working on that one, but hear me out. I participated in an event. No, Zimzilla 99 as a YouTube channel focusing on Godzilla and other creatures and what they mean in terms of their character design, their roles in the story, and their tropes. And I set up to make my own Godzilla, make my own story, and to have fun with it. And I will present it. But this video is about the first part of my story I'm going to present, titled Godzilla Warpath. Started in 1945. The Japanese Navy was patrolling the islands until they stumbled across a creature. Some thought it was a crocodile, a whale, or shark. By further inspection, they found out it was none of those. It was hunting for fish and other sea life. The Navy called this creature Godzilla. Later, while examining the creature, they found that its territory was Odo Island, as it was about to swim to Odo Island. Then the Navy got close, and they saw Godzilla walking towards the locals. So the Navy took precaution and started shooting Godzilla. However, they were baffled to see that Godzilla had instant heal factor. He started growing his skin back, scale by scale, muscle by muscle. So then, the Japanese Navy kept firing at him, but it was no use. Godzilla kept preparing himself. But then, the Navy got Godzilla's attention, so they started to lure him off the ocean. The Navy had a plan. They planned to swim towards an iceberg to trap Godzilla inside. So after days of following, they finally made it. And they started commencing their plan. They started firing at the iceberg and luring out Godzilla. Luckily, an avalanche fell on top of Godzilla, trapping him there for a long time. The Japanese Navy kept this a secret for a long time until March 1st, 1954. A nuke was detonated on Bikini Atoll, 1954. But besides burning in its path, it mutated Godzilla. It popped out of the ocean and grew in size and started roaring. And then it started heading for the Japanese Navy for revenge. I kept swimming until I found it and started attacking the Japanese Navy. Stroke war with it. And that's the day where Godzilla declared war against humanity. Ever since that day, the Japanese Navy has always tried multiple ways to distract or to kill Godzilla. None have been successful until one day he went to Tokyo and started destroying the city, looking for the Japanese Navy. But what happened was horrendous. Godzilla had destroyed the city, leaving nothing but radiation and fire behind. It was uninhabitable, and some might even deem it a wasteland. Ever since that day, Godzilla was deemed too dangerous in the eye of the public. So that's when G-Force was established. And among their ranks was Dr. Serizawa. He studied Godzilla and his behavior, most impressively, his anatomy. Serizawa learned that Godzilla had some sort of healing factor or regeneration. So then he tampered with radiation to find out that it was compatible with DNA. He called it neo-evolution, and he tested it on rats, fish, and amphibians. Some results were negative and some were positive, until he tried it out on himself for his first human subject. Surprisingly, it went out really well. Serizawa was now a lot more agile, faster, stronger, and smarter. and he devised the Mutant Division Task Force, consisting of him and his colleagues. Years later, in the 60s, there would be more witnesses of giant monsters called giants, or kaiju. The Japanese government informed the public of these giant creatures and precautions to do when they arrive. The whole world knew about these giants, and for some reason, things kept being the same. One day, one of the recruits, Douglas Gordon, was very exceptional with his tactics of killing the kaiju. He would build weapons, especially designed for each one of the kaiju, and would devise plans to make them fight each other. His plans worked really well to the point where he was demoted captain and became leader of the Mutant Task Division. And throughout the 70s, the monsters seemed to finally meet their end. More and more, the kaiju started disappearing, thanks to Douglas Gordon. He wiped out every single one of them, except for the very first, Godzilla, which still remains to be the biggest and most powerful monster they've ever faced. No matter each time, they've always failed, building the right weapons, devising the right plans, but they always failed until one day, he decided to build a weapon so destructive and so devastating that not even Godzilla would survive. It was called the Oxygen Destroyer. It would eradicate any trace of oxygen in a life form and evaporate them. The problem with this is that he has to keep this hidden from the world government, or else they would make weapons and kill each other. So with the permission of G-Force, they kept this a top secret mission. So they devised a plan. They would distract Godzilla of the Gotengo, a machine you built earlier, and drive him all the way towards a remote location in the ocean and kill him with the Oxygen Destroyer. Godzilla was rampaging Tokyo again until the Gotengo arrived and started blasting Godzilla. So then the Gotengo flew out of Tokyo Bay and headed to the ocean. Godzilla pursued the Gotengo. A few hours gone by, and they made it to the remote location. Godzilla was ready to blast him with his atomic breath until they detonated the Oxygen Destroyer in the water. It seemed to work. Godzilla slowly melted and evaporated. However, his body was still floating. But then, out of nowhere, the French and the U.S. military came out of nowhere and started grabbing Godzilla's body, or at least traces. And then, G-Force and the Mutant Division Task Force found Cameron Winter to be the head of the operation. They needed to take Godzilla's DNA in order to make their own monster. So then, the Gotengo had to fight for Godzilla's body. Meanwhile, they had to fight the U.S. and French Navy. It was hard, but at the end, they won. But by the time they did, out of nowhere, a creature emerged out of the ocean. It was smaller and just red. It was a crustacean-like creature, and it started destroying the ships. And a dozen of them started popping out of the ocean and flooded the ships, and ate the crew members. And even more creatures started to pop out of the ocean. These ones were flying everywhere and started shooting beams that would evaporate everything, like the Oxygen Destroyer. And then Gordon realized his weapon he made an even worse monster than Godzilla. So then, with Godzilla's body intact, they had two options. They could build a machine that would destroy Destroyer, or they could revive Godzilla, and Godzilla could fight Destroyer. And they could Gordon decided to take the latter, since it would be much easier. However, reviving Godzilla would be kind of a hard task to pull off. So they juiced him up with all the radiation they could gather. Miki Sagusa, the operation, while she was trying to revive Godzilla radiation, then she had a telekinetic link with Godzilla. While Godzilla was healing himself, he could talk to her. And Godzilla asked her, "Why are you trying to revive me? Let me be. Let me just die. It's better off that way." And Miki Sagusa asked him, "But we need your help. We need you to fight a monster we've created that is much worse than you. We need your help." Then Godzilla said, "Why should I care? After all, you as a species never did." And then Godzilla told her how he didn't destroy cities because he hated humans. Rather, it's because humans hated him, and it's his only way to get back. Then Miki Sagusa and Douglas Gordon made a peace treaty with Godzilla. Godzilla won't be harmed by the military as long as he's on his good side. So with that, they revived Godzilla, and he's about to fight a giant version of the crustacean called Destroya. Destroya has a legion of many land and aerial versions of himself to attack the city. Then Godzilla was about to fight Destroya at him with his atomic breath. Then Destroya uses his zero oxygen beam, which does hurt Godzilla, but Godzilla regenerates. And then the two fight. It turns out Godzilla's atomic breath can harm Destroya, so they were at it for a long time until the Gotengo came and helped Godzilla. Together, they defeated Destroya, and thus Godzilla has finally declared peace with humans and is set to have a new life. But Cameron Winter still has a remnant of Godzilla's DNA and plans to make a clone, and an alien probe is launched from space onto Earth, about to mutate. And it's now for my favorite part of the video, the design, analysis, and behind the scenes of my story. For Godzilla, it was very easy. All my favorite designs, GMK, Stan Winston's, Final Wars, the original, and Singular Point. And also made my own things, like Godzilla's scales. Godzilla's scales have been somewhat of a debate, if they're meant to be crocodile scales or nuclear bomb scars. Although looking at both, they look very similar, so I decided to just combine the two and make pebbly round scales, or borrowed some of Delgado's concepts with bigger scales on the top and smaller scales on the bottom. You can't really see that here that well, but with the belly, you might understand what I'm talking about. Also, I made Godzilla a lot more dinosaur-like because throughout Godzilla's history, he's somewhat always meant to be a dinosaur or a dinosaur-like creature. So I decided to add that. Also, his spine color is bluer than usual, inspired by the original's color, or at least this depiction of the original Godzilla. Also, I just thought it looked neat. And the spines are crooked in the original form because of the blast impact. While Godzilla was still repairing himself, the blast sucked everything up, including him. So while he was regenerating, the implosion shaped the spines, thus the crooked shape. However, in his 70 form, his spines have more of a natural look. Even though they're slightly mutated, they resemble the original Godzilla's spines. And the original pre-mutated Godzilla is just what he might have looked like if he wasn't mutated. Now, time for Anguirus and Rodan. Anguirus and Rodan were pretty easy. Rodan, I just make a spiky pterodactyl. Also, I would give him stripes in his beak because I thought that would look really cool. For Anguirus, I borrowed Singular Point's design and Godzilla Heritage, and also made my own things. Boom, Anguirus. Next is Destroya. Destroya is a really cool one. Destroya is one of my favorite kaijus of all time. And he was perfect for the story. But there's one teeny tiny problem I have with his design. His design is really cool, but it's kind of dinosaur-y in the sense that it has little arms and legs. It doesn't look that crab-like. Don't get me wrong, the texture and the tail does, but besides that, not that much reads crab. So all I had to do was redesign the original state, which didn't look bad, just didn't look alive. So I just gave it teeth and eyes. Next, for his land form, I didn't have to change much. All I had to do is just make him look a little more like the original form, and also give more crab-like features. And I gave him a squishy xenomorph inside mouth. Next up is Destroyer's aerial form. I actually really like aerial form's design. It's very purple, shiny, and spiky. However, it doesn't have the color scheme of Destroyer. Don't get it wrong, it looks like Destroyer, but the wings are purple. He doesn't have any arms and his legs in the back. So all I had to do was just make him look more mutated, make him look like the first form a little bit, and give him arms and a yellow-ish chest. The Destroyer is based off the original and the King of the Monsters version, where they just made it look like a missile. I basically just did the same thing, but made it chunkier. The Gotengo is a unique exception. The Gotengo is one of my favorite machines or vehicles in the whole Godzilla franchise, behind the Super X and Mechagodzilla and Mogera. So, what makes this Gotengo special and different? Well, one, it's more realistic. Due to the time period being in the 70s, the technology at the time was pretty limited. Even though the humans were super smart, especially the mutants, their technology level wasn't that high yet. So I based the Gotengo off of military ships and airplanes at the time. Still made it look sleek and cool, but not enough to be primitive or futuristic. Found a perfect in between and created my favorite Gotengo. For those that like my story, I'd recommend to follow, like, and subscribe for more of my content. And if you really want to see some of the elements I had in my story, I recommend to watch some Godzilla movies like Godzilla vs. Destroyer, the original, Final Wars, and the entirety of the Heisei and Millennium era of Godzilla. Now, if you don't want to watch those movies, you can look up and research some of the concepts I use for this story. And I hope, for those that don't know Godzilla, that this was a proper and interesting, fun introduction to the franchise. And for those that do know Godzilla, tell me in the comments below what I did right, wrong, or stuff I should expand or get rid of. And remember, never give up, keep creating, and always have fun. Especially with stories that have lasted over 70 years.